As tens of thousands of people prepare for Sunday's 57th edition of Toronto's Walk with Israel, they'll be walking to fundraise for Israel. The goal this year is $780,000 for mental health, education, and resilience programs supporting Israelis affected by October 7th and the continuing regional conflicts with Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas. But this year's walk is also taking place amidst heightened security fears here at home over domestic terrorism after synagogue shootings, attacks on Jewish businesses, and a warning from Canadian security agencies that a mass casualty extremist attack against Canada's Jewish community remains a realistic possibility. Toronto police say there will be protesters allowed this year, but they'll have to stay in designated protest zones at Bathurst and Shepherd. Police say if protesters enter the permitted walk route on the road and cause trouble, they'll be arrested. And if they do things that are illegal, like intimidation, harassment, uttering hate speech, or other criminal behavior, it's not going to be tolerated, and they can expect to be arrested. Protesters also can't block the sidewalk. They can't roam around causing problems in the surrounding neighborhoods either, where police from Toronto, outlying regions, and even the OPP will be out in force. But the message from the Toronto Jewish Federation officials is don't engage and walk with pride.
I think that for our children, for them to see us and sort of stay calm and say, look, we march proudly. We have a strong Jewish identity. We have a strong Jewish community. We're going to be safe as we walk through, and we can't stop people from yelling hateful things, but we can march proudly, and we can say that we're not going to let it make us cower and hide inside. We need to actually be able to march proudly as Jews in our city. And so we need to do that safely. And that's what all of these different measures are meant to allow us to do, which is live as proud Jews in the city of Toronto.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Friday, June 5th, 2026. Welcome to North Star, the flagship podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, made possible thanks to the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granofsky-Gluskin Charitable Foundation. A record 56,000 people turned out last year, including many non-Jewish allies. This year, the walk is expected to be the most significant public expression of Jewish pride and solidarity in Canada. Last year, we knew the fate of 251 Israeli hostages was still not clear. This time, all have now been returned, either alive or for burial. And Israel has emerged from several wars, with Hamas, two with Iran, with fragile ceasefires replacing active fighting on multiple fronts. The situation with Hezbollah in Lebanon, though, remains tense. Israel faces growing international isolation and criticism, and that hatred makes Israelis and Jews vulnerable as targets of worldwide terror attacks, including Bondi Beach in Australia last Hanukkah, and also bombings and stabbings in Europe. This is also the first walk when Canadian police and governments have ramped up spending significantly to help pay for security fortifications for the community. Ottawa's introduced new laws to curb hate crimes, although they're not in effect yet, and we must give credit where credit is due. Toronto police have made a flurry of arrests in recent weeks related to hate crimes. But as we've reported on this issue before, prosecutions and convictions are still rare. The walk also comes just 4 days after Prime Minister Mark Carney delivered his highly anticipated speech on anti-Semitism. I've done the Walk for Israel every year since October 7th. On today's episode, we'll revisit the podcast I did on last year's Walk for Israel and how it played out under heavy security along Bathurst Street.
We are the most resilient community. Our passion and pride is undeniable, it's unbreakable, it's unshakable. And today we show everybody why.
That's what it sounded like Sunday at the launch of the Jewish community's annual Walk with Israel in its 56th year, but only the second time since October 7th. But unlike 2024, coming so soon after the Hamas massacre of Israelis, when Canadian Jews were also grieving for the victims and the hostages, and fearful of encountering large crowds of local anti-Israel protesters, This year, the walk had an altogether different vibe. As you heard, MC Gian Megan set the tone, and this despite the walk coming just 4 days after an American gunman opened fire and killed 2 Israeli embassy staffers outside a Jewish museum in Washington, D.C. That attack shocked Jews around the world and did make some people in the Jewish community here nervous about whether they'd be in danger coming to this walk. But with thousands of police officers on hand, most people I spoke to felt doing the 4-kilometer route was the best remedy to fight back against rampant anti-Semitism abroad and here in Canada. When so many incidents of Jew hatred have been recorded over the last 19 months, including nearly 1,000 by Canadian police alone, that the government of Israel just raised its travel warnings for Israelis coming to our country to not display their Jewish jewelry or any visible Jewish or Israeli clothing that would make them a target of terrorism. But on this day, there was no hiding Israeli flags or Stars of David or hostage dog tags. In fact, the only people hiding their faces were the group of 40 or so anti-Israel protesters who Toronto police permitted to stand in 2 designated cordoned-off areas on both sides of a major intersection just over 1,000 meters before the finish line, which meant the walkers had to pass through this gauntlet, leaving some activists like Matthew Taube asking questions about why this was allowed in the first place.
So here's my big question. At the Walk for Israel, they give a designated space for the pro-Palestinians and the Jew haters to go. Right here. Check it out. Could you imagine if they provided that for the Pride Parade? A whole area that people could go and protest gays and lesbians and the entire LGBT community? Or if they did the same thing with Black Lives Matter? But no. When it comes to Jews, this is what's allowed. Shameful.
This year's Walk for Israel started at a different spot than usual, at Temple Sinai, a synagogue that's been vandalized since October 7th, and also where the family of Canadian October 7th victim Judy Weinstein Haggai are members, where she too was a member before moving to Israel decades ago to raise her family on Kibbutz Nir Oz with her Israeli husband, and where the couple were the first people killed when Hamas terrorists stormed the community. Hamas still holds their bodies. Temple Sinai's Rabbi Michael Dolgan holds their memories in one pocket, while also thinking about the Israeli embassy staffers murdered last week.
I was just talking with our new MP about how our member, Marilyn Weinstein, whose daughter's body is still held in Gaza, hasn't heard from one member of the federal government during this time, even to express their sympathy. And they need to know that the whole community is with them, that even when they don't get the support they deserve, that the entire Jewish community stands with the hostages and their families, stands for our right to be ourselves, loud and proud in the streets of Toronto with no apologies to anyone. And so that's what we work for every day. So to be named as the host of this event makes us incredibly proud, and we look forward to every opportunity to host the community and to stand together with Israel and the hostages and our own pride in who we are. This is the time to stand up and say, not just for the Jewish community, but for all who affirm law and order and Western values, that when we disagree, we don't disagree by assaulting synagogues and attacking other places of Jewish gathering. We disagree respectfully, and we have the right to stand together with pride and to be who we are and to be seen and to celebrate who we are and our love for Israel.
What message did you give to your congregation? This is 4 days after the murders in Washington, D.C.
People are absorbing the tragedy of the crime that took place, the murder in the streets in Washington, D.C. And our response needs to be that we work with authorities to be as safe as possible, and we won't live in fear. We will stand up, and we will be present, and we will be seen, and we expect the authorities, as they're doing today in a beautiful way, to protect us, and they need to do that every day, and to apply the laws that make it illegal to harass members of a minority community or anyone.
Many politicians consider attending the walk with Israel a don't-miss event on their calendars. I didn't see the two newly appointed liberal Jewish Toronto area cabinet ministers, Evan Solomon or Julie Dabrazin, here, but perhaps it was because the walk coincided with the reopening of Parliament on Monday and a visit by King Charles, and a caucus meeting called by Prime Minister Mark Carney to get ready. The Liberal government has promised to bring in so-called bubble legislation to protect minority communities from hateful protests outside synagogues and schools and community centers. But Carney's recent rebuke of the Israeli government in a joint communique with France and England last week and threatened sanctions about expanding the West Bank settlements and the renewed war in Gaza and the humanitarian aid blockade for several months was on top of mind for some Israeli visitors to the walk, including Omri Kohavi, a Nova Music Festival survivor, and Ilan Factor, a dance festival producer, who are both in Toronto as part of the current traveling Nova Festival Memorial Exhibition. Kochavi was moved by the love and support from Toronto's Jewish community on display here, but thinks the Canadian leader has a lot to learn before making strong policy statements on the Middle East.
You saw this announcement. What is your message back to the Canadian government?
I think the Canadian government, they don't know the truth. They don't know what really happened there. They should investigate if they want to say something about the war, about Israel. And I believe that if they gonna investigate something before they speak, it will be the result gonna be different. And I want to invite you to watch, to come to visit us in our exhibition, Nova exhibition, to see the truth. Then maybe they're gonna talk different.
And again, I asked about the Judy Weinstein Haggai, the hostage from this synagogue, who's a member. Her family is from here. What does that mean to you? What does that symbolize?
We came here to help the community unite itself and for the exhibit to be part of the Jewish community. And we relate to everything that the Jewish community stands for. We don't deal with politics. We don't put ourselves in front of Hamas. We hope our actions will make everybody understand how terrible and horrifying Hamas is as a so-called movement. And we just show a story which is a universal story. It's easy for everyone to relate with. And that's our way to push forward and put pressure on the rest of the world, to show them that we are human beings just like everybody else. And what happened to us could happen to anyone here in the street, could happen to anyone here in the neighborhood. And that's why it's important to support the synagogue, to support the community, to be part of this parade. But it's above it. It's a universal message.
The federal conservative leader also held a caucus meeting on Sunday, but Deputy Leader Melissa Landsman was here at the walk.
We're here 3 or 4 days after the Washington murders. How do you put these two together on the same day?
Look, I think this is an answer to the fact that the community will not stand for that. I think when you look around the world and you see genocidal slogans being chanted in our streets, gunshots into schools, fire bombings into businesses, that's exactly what globalized the Intifada is. And it has to be more than thoughts and prayers with the families of those two victims, and we have to understand that this might not stop there. So in response to that, we will walk proud and we will walk strong. 50,000 people marching here for freedom, for democracy, for the rule of law, and for a country that we want to feel safe in as a community.
City just put in bubble legislation. What is the Conservative going to do to try to speed up the Carney promise of bubble legislation, or whatever they're going to call it?
Look, we've been calling on this government to act for the last 19 months. I think bubble legislation is an answer to the abdication of responsibility of many of the governments across the country, the police forces, who have not been enforcing the law. We do not have a law problem. We have an enforcement problem, and we want to see people who are breaking the law go to jail, and if they're not from here, we want to see them go back to their homes.
York Centre's newly elected MP, Roman Baber, is the only Conservative seat in the entire city of Toronto, which went all Liberal. Baber released a statement just before the walk, worried the mayor and the city wouldn't enforce the existing hate laws to keep marchers safe. His riding's been one of the epicenters of anti-Jewish attacks.
It's really time that we speak on behalf of the Jewish community and demand more from the leadership of the Toronto Police and Mayor Olivia Chow. Many of our constituents have felt intimidated to come to this walk. As we parked our car and we walked, we saw a bunch of characters with their faces wrapped up in keffiyehs. And we got to ask, why are they hiding their faces? What is their intention? Clearly, the Toronto Police are doing a lot to protect us, but more needs to be done.
Toronto's Mayor Olivia Chow did not attend the walk. She didn't come last year either. She did vote yes last week when her city council passed its own municipal bubble bylaw. It comes into effect July 2nd. The mayor of Vaughan, Stephen Del Duca, says Toronto's mayor choosing not to come speaks volumes, despite her recent efforts at rapprochement with the Jewish community.
I believe one of the most important obligations that a mayor, well, any elected leader has to their constituents, to all of their constituents, is to show up and to show support at all times, but in particular when communities and individuals are facing unnecessary, unfair, and frankly, unacceptable attacks. And the Jewish community, in particular since October 7th of 2023, in the city of Vaughan, in the city of Toronto, and across this country, have been made to feel particularly vulnerable. This is a moment when elected leaders need to step up and do the right thing. That's why I'm here today. Two of my council colleagues, Gila Marto and Chris Ainsworth, are also here. It's why I felt very comfortable and very proud about our bubble bylaw, our bubble protection bylaw, to protect all faith communities, including, of course, our Jewish residents. I hope more will do it, but I also want to see the federal government and the provincial government step up. It should not be left to individual municipalities. And I know Prime Minister Carney committed to this.
Toronto's Police Chief Myron Demkew came to the walk, but he wasn't giving interviews. You could see police spotters on rooftops. Helicopters were patrolling overhead. And according to Shelley Carroll, the head of Toronto's Police Service Board, law enforcement was well prepared after police had increased security patrols following the Washington shootings.
We really just reviewed the plan that we already had in place against the Washington incident, and it didn't take too much more because we were already planning heavy security because we want the walk to be entirely without incident. And so we have additional security. And the best part of the plan is it's GTA-wide. We're actually counting on services from the other GTA forces. And so having a cooperative and using all of the services together with the Toronto Police Service in the lead position is really making sure that this year we're safe and don't have to engage with the protesters at all.
Well, they're here, though, so...
They are.
What efforts are there in terms of arrests, drones, gathering evidence? What can you tell us in terms of numbers?
Well, a lot of people don't realize that gathering of evidence and arrests, that goes on all year round. And so again, as they're in the protests this year, officers are trained, our Toronto police officers especially, but increasingly all of them, to understand when they're hearing something that might meet the criminal code for hate speech, hate crimes, and also mischief. Mischief sounds like a minor word, but in the criminal code, it's a big deal. And so where we can lay those charges, we will. They're of course, processing someone right now who vandalized synagogues last weekend. And they moved heaven and earth to make sure that they found the culprit using video evidence. And that sort of...
Wait, they found him? They already found him? That's news.
Yeah,
arrested?
Yeah. I don't know about the arrest. I know there's a process going on right now. But that type of deep investigation will be the case if anything takes place today as well.
Why allow protesters anywhere near here? Because they cordoned off. They could cordon off far away. Why?
Well, we're following the letter of the law, meeting both the charter and the code. And as you know, the city recently adopted its bubble zone report, and so we're in the middle of implementing that as well.
You could see the walk was undeniably more tightly controlled when it came to protesters compared with last year. Toronto police had promised to keep these protesters to designated zones. Well, that didn't work perfectly. In fact, right at the start of the march, police were seen escorting some protesters up along the sidewalk beside the Jewish participants. Officials acknowledged later that while they set up these designated zones, police don't have the authority to force protesters to stay inside them. Later, we passed a half-dozen extremist anti-Zionist religious Jews standing with anti-Israel signs along a grassy path, but the crowd wasn't having it. Police told me later that the two official protest zones were on both corners on the south side of the intersection of Bathurst and Shepherd. And although there were way fewer protesters this year, probably about 40 only, it wasn't fun as we walked by and had to be subjected to hateful chants. There were reports that some set off a smoke bomb, but it must have happened after I passed by.
But there's lots of security. I actually feel okay. I don't think it's going to be so bad. It's just annoying. And you can hear people are fed up. They're just booing. And there's an older gentleman blasting them with his shofar right in their megaphone. Very nice. I haven't seen that before. Take off your terrorist masks.
Last year, Toronto police laid charges against 6 people. But as of last I checked, only one person was arrested this year after he was heard hurling anti-Semitic slurs. Police charged him with mischief and causing a disturbance.
And now after the protesters, we get to dance. As we're walking down the hill, down to Shepherd, down to the JCC. People are eating watermelon and dancing. As we walk past the corner where every weekend since October 13th, they have a rally, pro-Israel rally. We needed that.
When we got to the finish line at the Prosserman Jewish Community Center, it took another 25 minutes of standing in a long line before you could pass through the metal detectors and undergo bag checks and then enter the Walk Festival and after party. And soon after, the skies opened up and the whole crowd got drenched. But this Toronto couple, David and Shelley Starr, felt empowered after having made it this far.
Well, I was coming on the walk no matter what. What happened in D.C. didn't bother me in the sense that I didn't feel unsafe here. I feel totally safe. Wouldn't miss it for the world.
How many have you done?
Lots, but I don't number.
Many times I've been on the walk.
And there was a few protesters today. How did that bother you at all? Or
no.
Did it encourage you?
We just screamed and yelled and drowned them out.
Oh, I see that.
What feeling do you have now that you've finished the walk after today? How do you feel? Better, worse, the same?
Much better. Just happy to be here with the whole community. Very proud.
It's a strong Jewish community. Thank goodness.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounded like for this episode of North Star, made possible thanks to the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin Charitable Foundation. Don't forget to come this year to our event booth. The CJN will be there handing out merchandise and having you sign up, or you can do it here online as well, for our free home delivery of our new magazine, the CJN Scribe Quarterly. And those who are new subscribers can enter a contest for a chance to win one of 3 cash prizes of $200. New subscribers only. North Star's produced by Zachary Judah Kaufman and Izzy Hellenchild, with Michael Freeman as executive producer and Alicia Richler as editorial director. Thanks for listening.